history, that heritage, combine it with technology so that you've got software, content, music, entertainment, machines, robots, all coming together, and that's really the future of innovation. But within this large trend, generative AI, of course, has become headlines. And in fact, the patenting for generative AI has grown by 800% over the last 6 years. But I want to put things in perspective as well. Actually, large language models and what AI is doing has been around for 20, 30 years. So this is not really new technology, but what's new is that the amount of data and the amount of learning, right, has transformed over the last few years. And so I think we need to be careful not to look at this new technology as some kind of God that will replace us as human beings. And for me as a musician, my own views is that, someone used to play jazz piano, until my father told me to stop playing jazz piano and be a proper lawyer instead. As someone who still remains very close to the music world, I feel that Gen AI is able to reproduce and able to replicate. And I don't see Gen AI having that spark of genuine human creativity. I don't see Gen AI is able to, it can learn from all the paintings of Monet and all the Impressionists, but I don't think Gen AI will be able to move from Impressionism to Cubism to Picasso. So I think we should look at Gen AI as a tool and not put it on the pedestal and make it like a god or make it as a new species, at least not now. Unless someone tells me in this audience that there's some radical change in the AI technology, I think we're very far away from artificial general intelligence, in fact. So as a tool, what we should do as member states and what WIPO wants to help all of you as member states is to make sure that the tool is regulated so that we manage the risks and the threats that the tool poses, and we make sure that we also give the opportunities that comes with the tool. What are some of the challenges and threats that come from Gen AI? Well, things which are connected to faiths, maybe things that are connected more to issues of ethics. That's not really, WIPO doesn't deal with it, but other UN agencies like UNESCO deals with these things. But I think for us at WIPO, we also want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the opportunities. Because Gen AI, I believe, can be a very powerful tool to empower creators and to empower innovators as well. For example, if you're a filmmaker and you don't have money, you're not being able to create a film based on the beautiful script that you have, that's based on your life experience. But with Gen AI, even though you don't have money, you can use Gen AI to generate a short film. And using that short film, right, you can get the attention of people around the world, maybe get attention of finances. And of course, I think even if we regulate the use of Gen AI, creators and musicians and other artists, right, will make use of it anyway to find new forms of creative expression. I think, for example, we have surveys that show that 60% of musicians, 60%, are already using Gen AI in some form to express themselves in new ways. Just like during my generation, when synthesizers and drum machines first came out, we as musicians embraced those electronic instruments to create new forms of music in the 1970s and the 1980s. So I think technology always becomes a tool. So I think what WIPO tries to do is that we are trying to make sure that the member states are able to come together as a global community. We organize a global conversation on IP and AI issues every 6 months. The next one will be on October 23rd and 24th, where we bring the 193 member states of WIPO, but also with industry, with civil society, with professors, with regulators, with ministers like the Minister of Justice, to come and talk about these issues. I don't think the world is ready for a IP and AI treaty yet, because I think that many countries are still trying to figure out their own domestic response to the Gen AI issue. And I think that difficult balance between technology and content, between copyright and new forms of technology, that's a balance that every country will need to figure out for itself. But what WIPO is trying to do is to make sure that in the meantime, we bring all of you together to talk about these issues. The second thing that we're trying to do is that make sure that we translate all of the conversations, right, into very concrete toolkits and recommendations, not to tell member states what to do, but to give you all of the steps and all of the different things that you need to think about as member states decide for themselves how to strike the right balance between all the different things that they need to. For example, how do you balance between the creative community and the technology community? And the third thing that we are going to do is that we're looking for very practical things that we can do to create opportunities for those who are in this space. So for example, working with the World Health Organization and the International Telecoms Union, ITU and WHO, we are pioneering a project to train AI entrepreneurs in Africa to solve healthcare problems in that part of the world. Why? Because without AI, without digitalization, you're not going to be able to manage your healthcare systems. You're not going to be able to manage patient data. We're also piloting a project in Southeast Asia to mentor AI entrepreneurs to address agricultural issues in Southeast Asia. So we are looking at the policy level discussions. We're looking at tools that help member states to figure out the right policy responses to this. And the last thing is that we are helping deliver projects that support opportunities for those in the AI space. And maybe just my last thing before, I know there are many other speakers, but last thing I want to say is that the IP system has been around for 130 years, since the 1880s. And during that time, we in the IP community have seen countless of waves of technological revolutions. The aeroplane, the car, the transistor, sending someone to the moon, computers, e-commerce, the mobile phones and all of that. And each time, the IP system has remained a system that's able to incentivize innovation because we have put the human creator, the human innovator at the center of the IP system. So my wish for all the member states is to make sure that whether it's AI or some new tool that will emerge, we don't know which way technology will turn, that all these tools are used to empower, enable, and support the human creator and the human innovator, and not to destroy, replace, or undermine the human creator or human innovator. And as long as the IP system focuses on that, as long as we understand technology, we adjust the law here and there, I think the IP system will continue to be relevant to all of you. I pledge WIPO support to work with all of you to make sure that AI and other new technologies will continue serving us as human beings. Thank you very much.
That was really a great start of discussion. And as you may have noticed, that we have started with the basis. In order to understand the topic of intellectual property, the innovation, we have already followed with Mr. Darren Tong about the opportunities that AI can provide, and also the humanity is at the center of innovation. And also, you mentioned something very important about the incentives that AI can provide. And here I would like to move on to Mr. Datuk Noor Jazlan bin Tan Sri Muhammad, who is Deputy President of the Senate of Malaysia. And I assume that your daily life at work is often related to legal frameworks and regulation and so on and so forth. So how can regulation and these legal frameworks don't be an obstacle for innovation?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Khalil. I have been a legislator for 20 years, and I was also, in some point of time, the Vice Minister for Internal Security. So, as the Justice Minister knows, enforcement is a big problem. But the issue is to actually create the parameters using the legislation to, in a way, regulate AI. But we need the regulation at a global level before we can translate it down to the local level. Because today, AI, intellectual property, before piracy happened when people copy DVDs and then sell DVDs. Now it's streaming, so it's very difficult to control IP trade because it cross borders and it's invisible. When you add on dark web to it, it becomes almost impossible to regulate. And even if you want to bring a case, you want to bring somebody to court, it will take a long time. So that's the challenge that we have in creating the legislation. What is the framework that we need to use? At the moment, we follow the Marrakesh Treaty, where we only have laws on patents and IP. That is not enough, because we need to have laws to control the movement of IP in the world. The piracy of what Darren was saying just now about piracy of content creators, because this can actually stifle the future development of the entertainment industry and connected industries. Whatever whatever AI does today is based on information that is vacuumed from the internet, current information. But we need to know, but once this information has been used, then there is no more information. And then creativity in that sense will be stifled if the content creators are not protected by law. So going forward, I think in my country, we are looking at several approaches. That means we have our dialogues with the local content creators. We have created something called My ID, My IP, to actually educate people on the how do you say, on the responsibilities when they are dealing with material which has a protected IP. We tell them, if you pirate this content illegally, you are actually depriving the content creator of his livelihood. And then if the person is no longer disincentivized by he cannot make money, he cannot make a living, therefore he will stop, and you won't be able to listen to his material anymore. So I think you have to have a mix also, since we cannot. It's quite difficult to control by legislation, so we have to educate the people. Other than that, the enforcement. Also, we need to educate and increase the capabilities of our enforcement officers so that they can zoom into meaningful work in enforcement, so that they don't waste their time, because it's so wide, the scope is so wide. You know, you chase one end, somebody steals this other end. You go this end, somebody steals on this end. So it's very difficult to manage. So I think that is the approach that Malaysia is taking. Yeah. So make legislation, but based on global standards, and then educating the people how to be responsible, because they have to take care of the creators' interests. They have to make a living to create the content. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we can remember of two terms of education and responsibility. And now that we have an idea about this topic of intellectual property innovation from the international organization, let's delve into the regional institutions. And I will move on to Mr. Grigory Iviliev, the president of the Eurasian Patent Office. And we would like also to know the experience of your office regarding the intellectual property. And is there any particularity of work that you are addressing?
Distinguished colleagues, I'm impressed by the positions which have been expressed by Mr. Darintong. And I would like to draw the attention to the fact that the AI as a tool approach, which approved by the IPO authority, that is the approach we need to follow. Within the last 10 years, the inventions within the AI fields increased by 20 times. And we faced this challenge, and we are ready to work with this. And I see the presentation of the position of the YPO, but what's for the patent agencies? We are ready for this, so we need to publish the guidelines within this field. And general terminology, for instance, is quite clear for us. I would like to remind that the current laws are not allowed us to accept the softwares, mathematical algorithms, the other types of software to acknowledge as AI, but in fact they are the foundation of AI. But at the same time, we do have technical solutions which have been designed by the use of AI tools. And the things which are not patented, we call non-technical characteristics, and in result of this, we create the technical solution which we can put within the patent terminology. And so here we can refer to the computer technologies within the design, for instance. Within the last several years, we enlarge our approaches within the patent technology. And I would like to mention that we analyzed the methodology of the IP5 agency, and our methods are correlating with those which are common for other leading agencies within the world. Uh, they can cooperate with other technical characteristics, and in fact, within the last years, it gives an impetus for the technological progress, and that is a quite um, loyal approach, but it's not the approach of the agency. That is a methodology which is quite relevant for the all IP communities within the world. And our technology proves that the use of AI tools within this approach is quite acceptable. What's for the copyrights and the legal status, I would like to mention the approach within the patent communities. It's been established in order to stimulate the creativity within people. And just imagine that the artificial intelligence is not able to assess what can be assessed by the human beings. What is given by the system of patenting? It gives the tools for the designers or engineers. They can evaluate the volume and amount of AI tools that they need. Uh, for instance, AI can understand the difference within the amount of money we can receive for the creative tool we design, for the company, for instance, or for the salaries which people receive. But for the emotional parts, for AI, how it can assess it? We gave the 50,000 patents not so far ago for the inventors from the Uzbekistan, who use alkaloids for the treatment of leucoma. And 300,000 of diseases are registered annually within the whole world, and how we can use AI in order to use this drug of choice in order to reduce the tumor in size. They could be toxic for the body, but those who do understand all the processes, they do understand that we made one step forward in terms of conquering of this disease. And who can assess the importance of this invention? And it's not the only case we have. What kinds of ambitions of AI we can accept within this field? We work with, in this particular case, for instance, for the university who invented this approach. That is the case which is common for the Kazakhstan, I guess. And I would like to mention that the cardiological patents which been invented in Kazakhstan brought a lot of positive impact. I would like to call the national agency to understand that the approaches to the patents within the world are alike, and the analysis of the worldwide practice is necessary in order to follow the certain path. But the national agencies have certain initiatives, they need to be approved by the international experience. I would like to mention that the target audience of conceptor, those who use the technologies, been mentioned by the YPO. And so the last week we participated in meetings in order to hear the reports on methodology for the expertise, not only for the 3D applications that's been already resolved, but for the use in the result of the expertise. But at the same time, all of us, we do agree with the things mentioned by Mr. Tang, that the one who's responsible is the human beings. 3D technology is the AI use at a very high level. And I would like to mention that the patent agencies are oriented at the AI of the very high level. And even when we give the patents, and even within the work with the invention, we implemented the machine translation and electronic system of classification. So the introduction of notions to our daily life, to our practice, to the things we achieved within modern world. And this requires a lot of handwork, creative approach from human beings. The AI tool will follow the certain path depending on us, and we are responsible for conquering the challenges and threats it gives. For instance, given the example of translation from English to Kazakh and many other languages, we need to create manually the database in order to allow translators all around the world to use the system and make the amendments within this. And the AI, which will work further, it will work on the basis of the impacts of thousands of specialists and experts within from linguistics and education field. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the shift from a speaker to a speaker give us a brief overview about the topic, and we have seen the international perspective as well as the Asian perspective with the minister and the deputy minister in Malaysia, and also the Eurasian countries. Let's move on now to Europe, okay? To give another perspective to Europe, and I'm not sure if we have with us the minister, the French minister, Mr. Laurent Saint-Martin. Is there with us? Yes, please. A round of applause for Minister Saint-Laurent Martin. So, Laurent Saint-Martin, he is the Minister Delegate for Foreign Trade and French National Abroad. And my question to you, Minister, is that we know that France was among the countries that have launched national AI strategies in 2018. And lately we have read the last report about AI strategies, so it would be great if you can share with us your experience regarding AI strategy and also innovation and intellectual property. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister of Justice and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to give me the opportunity in a nutshell to update after this report you mentioned the French strategy in terms of artificial intelligence, and as the title of this panel mentioned about IP as well, because it's a key topic. But maybe as you ask me what happened since this report of 2019, actually a lot happened in France, because we decided to make artificial intelligence a real priority for France, because we do believe that AI is not only a tech revolution, but a society revolution, and that it will change a lot of things in the world, included global and multilateral relationships. So we think it's absolutely key, and it's a priority as we deployed more than 2.5 billion euros since this report and since this strategy. But the main year of advancement for France was this year, 2025. As in February, France hosted the AI Action Summit, which reunited more than 100 countries, included Kazakhstan, and thank you very much to the government and the president to this great participation, with 28 heads of state and major AI companies present. During this momentum, we had more than 109 billion euro investment from different countries to showcase that Europe and France in particular want to be a key player of artificial intelligence. And when I mean a key player, I mean every brick of this very complicated but very strategic value chain. Of course, when you are talking about France, you are talking about some key players that you already know, such as Mistral, for example. So when we are talking about LLMs, of course, France is in the middle of the game. But also when we are talking about superscaler and when you are talking about data centers. And actually, the 109 billion euro investment that I was mentioning is mainly about data centers. So, of course, for us, it's key. And during this Action Summit, we also were pleased to get the support of Kazakhstan and many other countries for the adoption of the political statement on inclusive and sustainable artificial intelligence for people and the planet. And this is as much important as AI itself. What is the purpose and what is the ethics that we want to focus on? So it was signed by 64 countries in total, which recognize the need for global reflection integrating the protection of intellectual property rights. So this is where I come to IP just in a nutshell. About IP protection, we do think that it is essential to the development on generative AI model, not only as a tool to incentivize innovation, but also as a real framework to ensure respect for creators' rights. So when we are talking about IP in AI, it's not only a question of protection, it's a question of framework and how we design the future of the century in terms of power, in terms of influence, and in terms, of course, of different strengths that will play a key role for artificial intelligence. So to sum up, we want AI to be a fully priority in France and in Europe. We want to be part in some very key bricks such as LLMs and superscalar and data center, and we want that ethic and IP be at the core of the debate and at the core of the solutions that we will find together. So, in another word, it's a multilateral question. It is a multilateral topic. And I guess this is why you organize this panel today, and I once again want to thank Kazakhstan for the fully support that we've done in February, and to thank you for the organization of this great forum, including very strategic topics such as AI and IP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, for your inspiring speech. And as you may have heard, that AI is a priority in France as well as for the other countries, and there will be a focus on ethics and regulation. So let's get back again to origin countries and origin institutions and move on to Mr. Bahit Sultano, okay, who is the member of Collegium of Economics and Financial Policy, Origin Economic Commission. So I have a very particular question to you. Do you think that we can have a unified approach that can be applied everywhere for intellectual property, or is there any particularities or specificities that countries and regions must maintain?
Thank you very much for your question. I will try to answer in Russian. Ну, во-первых, я хотел
First of all, I would like to say thank you to organizers and Minister of Justice, Minister of Justice, for giving the importance and high level of this event. I think that this is a very important platform for the knowledge exchange, experience exchange, especially within such difficult fields as intellectual property and AI. For the artificial intelligence, so not so far ago, we get used to the internet. We introduced the taxes on Google, for instance, and so we face the consequences. And what's for the issues of intellectual property, it's a much more difficult topic to discuss. Even I joined the departments on the development of competence within the Eurasian Economic Commission 1.5 years ago, and the competence starts from the intellectual property and vice versa. These issues are correlating, and the topic of intellectual property put us in a difficult choice, I guess. And within each country, we do have different approaches. For instance, I'm quite interested in Malaysian experience, and the governmental body started to regulate this topic at the legislative level, and it depends on the level of development in terms of legal fields and economical development of the country, as well as the social aspect of the issue itself. For instance, mentioning economy, Mr. Ivlev mentioned that they divided the mechanic from a non-mechanic approach, and that is the most easiest way today in order to start regulate the issue of patenting. In the Russian language, we use the expression meaning that we work from the middle of the room, and actually we accentualize our approach from the object itself and then tend to regulate it at the legislative level and the other things also. This is the point to start. The key issue is who is the right owner, who is the owner of the products made by the AI, with the help of AI. Because we can have co-authors, many co-authors within one project, and the mention code of the organization which established it, those people who trained others one. Here we refer to the billion of people who are responsible for the certain issues or introducing a certain data, but there are also the challenge of fake data to the training of the AI system. And this, of course, can affect to the product itself and introduce the fake characteristics. And here we have a lot of issues to discuss. Within the Eurasian Economic Union, we also discuss these issues within the agreements and also the introduction of the policies of the member states of the Eurasian Economic Union. And the Commission itself as the body should regulate this issues, and that are the things we do. We have several platforms for this, including consultative committee within my department, which captures all the experts within the fields, and we gather annually. We prepare the analytical review on the practical approaches and development in terms of development of legislation. And annually, also within the consultative committee, we regulate the reports on legislative practice together, and then provide the impetus for further development of the system. Last year, the head of the 5 states adopted the declaration on the development of Eurasian integration till 2030, so-called strategic document till the 2049, including the decree of the Eurasian Economic Commission for further joint work for our countries in terms of protection of intellectual property, and that is the work we have. We also have some practical draft designs on establishing of a unified system in order to have the register for the trademarks. But from the perspective of intellectual property, once again, I would like to repeat, we have different levels of development within different countries. And you are right in terms of necessity of having certain coordination and supervision. And that is provided by our platforms also. And once again, different countries use their own approaches, and that depends on their level of development. For instance, in Belarus, they started to make the drafts of legal acts. In Kazakhstan and Russia, we have a developed conception. In Russia, they do have the concept on the AI. In Kyrgyz Republic, there is the consultative body which is already working within the other state bodies, which is responsible for the issue of coordination of further development of AI. And here it is important to use our knowledge and experience to use the joint approach in order to harmonize the legislative system and our approaches. And so the patent agencies, governmental bodies are working together within our platforms for this purpose. And international experience is also quite important because, as I mentioned, each country has its own characteristics in terms of development of AI and within other legal approaches connecting with this issue. And these platforms are necessary to be used, including today's Astana International Forum. And we work tightly together with other organizations. I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Darren Tang. Last year we met each other, and we do have the joint projects. And so with the help of his team, we worked together with Mr. Hassan, for instance, and we organized the seminars joining 5 countries and webinars in order to share the knowledge we have and in order to receive the feedback. That is, I think, quite necessary for YPO also, and also to receive the whole picture of the regions, with challenges we have, for instance, and our further steps on organizing of joint events on such platforms when we do see the other integrations of experience exchange. And I would like to repeat that it seems like we do have a similar integrations or approaches in terms of integrating of legal within the legal systems, but it is essential to see the other approaches from other international organizations and corporations. And all of these moments we tend to discuss within the platforms. Once again, I would like to use this opportunity to say thank you for the organizers and wish to have a successful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sultanov, and we felt the hard work of coordination and supervision and how to launch joint initiatives and platforms. And this is something very important when we want to gather different stakeholders around a theme that is very hard to interpret, that is very hard to agree on. And I really liked your intervention, and thank you again, Mr. Minister. Okay, so let's move on now to another experience from North Macedonia. And we have with us Mr. Bisar Dormishi, Minister of Economy and Labor of the Republic of North Macedonia. And I would like to ask you, he's with us? Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, we would like to know the experience of your country regarding intellectual property and how to support innovation regarding SMEs and also startups.
Thank you very much. Before I start the speech or answer the questions, I want to mention two points. First, thank you this opportunity to be a part of this organization of this forum. And second, it's my first time in Astana in Kazakhstan. I want to mention that the city it's very, very beautiful. The people are kindly. I am surprised in a positive way. At North Macedonia, we strongly believe that building an innovation-driven economy is the way forward, and intellectual property plays a crucial role in this journey. We are in the final stage of developing a new national intellectual property strategy that ties IP policy directly to our broader development goals, especially to help small and medium-sized enterprises and startups thrive. For these businesses, IP isn't just about legal protection, it's a real business asset that can help them grow and compete. To make IP easier to understand and use, we are translating WIPO's quiet and diagnostic tool for startups into Macedonia. This will give our local innovators the practical knowledge they need to navigate the IP system with confidence. At the same time, we are supporting digital transformation by backing teach entrepreneurs through our Fund for Innovation and Technology Development. We are also working hard to align our digital infrastructure and regulation with European Union standards so our economy stays competitive on the global stage. But having a strong IP system is just the beginning. To attract real investment into our creative sectors, especially in today's digital world, we need to combine solid legal protection with a supportive environment that encourages innovation. That's why we put in place a comprehensive legal framework, including the law on innovation and the law on industrial property, which protect both private businesses and publicly funded research. We regularly update these laws to keep pace with EU and global standards. We've also strengthened our cybersecurity environment. Our national cybersecurity strategy for 2024 to 2028 supports safer digital operation for small businesses, and the draft law on network and information system security, prepared earlier this year, will align us the important EU cybersecurity directives. We're taking a proactive approach through our upcoming SMI strategy focusing on boosting innovation, encouraging collaboration between universities and businesses, and expanding digital skills. Through the European Digital Innovation Hub, we are already helping SMEs with digital upskilling, and programs that let them test new ideas before investing fully. At the same time, we are investing in infrastructure to build a stronger innovation landscape. This will include plans for two Center of Excellence, a technology park, and ongoing support for accelerators and dedicated startups centers. Finally, we offer generous grants through the law for financial support of investment, covering up to half of investment cost, with a cap of 1 million euros to encourage companies to invest in technology development and research. We know there's more work to do, especially in improving IP enforcement and coordination between institutions, but we are committed to these improvements because our goal is clear: to create a secure, competitive, and welcoming environment where creative industries and startups can truly thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Dormici. Thank you for sharing the experience of North Macedonia and related to how to protect intellectual property for SMEs and also startups. It was really very insightful. And now let's move on again to another experience, a very important experience, okay? And the experience of Russia. And it's an honor to welcome with us Mr. Yuri Zubov, who is the head of the Federal Service for Intellectual Property, Rospatent. A round of applause, please. So my question to you is of course to share the experience of Russia, and I would add another question: is it possible to extend the experience that we'll be sharing with us to the other countries?
Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much. I would like to express the gratitude for the organizers for the invitation in order to have such a serious discussion with the experts. And I would like to say that the Russia, of course, has the thorough approach to the AI technology, and it also expressed within the legal framework within different fields in Russia. And the AI technology is the one which requires the great focus, and it costs a lot. And we discussed the issue in terms of connecting AI with the IP, and how they depend from each other in terms of further prospects. I would like to mention that within the government, we have the strategy on AI federal projects, which works within this legal framework, and this provides support for different type of companies within the legal framework, and they quite active in terms of sending an application for registering their patent. These systems, if we will take a closer look at the intellectual property from the perspective of a tool for the development of AI, and here we need to understand how AI developed in Russia. We take a close look to the patent data, and we have a free access. Each minute within the world, technology is patent, which is connected with the AI. The last year we have had more than 3 million patents, and this information gives us the necessary vision in terms of use of the tool. And within the ROS patent, we have the great approach. We developed the system which allows to have the continuous monitoring of development of AI, which can be used to the further analysis of patent information within the worldwide approach, in order to discuss the R&Ds, for instance, in order to decrease the time of discussion and the time of from design to the ready done work. And this project is implemented jointly with several industries and ministries, and we plan to scale up it further and make it open to use within the Eurasian space, and our Eurasian colleagues and with our foreign colleagues also. In order to patent the invention, and it's not only invention we just made with the help of AI, we elaborated the clear instructions. We are at the stage of approval of the law on establishing the conditions for the AI developments in order to patent algorithms, in order to give an understanding of the design models we have in industrial models, for instance. We do know what we refer to the computer interfaces and the graphic interfaces, and within this law and regulation we try to make the notion of this and describe all the necessary approaches for further patenting. And the second aspect is how we use AI within the intellectual property in Russia. Um, Up to date, we use with a weak AI. We use weak AI, but we are focused on further work within this field. For the classification, it is necessary to use AI. First of all, the expert in Russian Federation receives the report on AI of the closest works regarding the work he or she does. Then it allows to make a search. And in Russia, in order to send the application for receiving the patent, you need to search, make a search in terms of graphic representation and also input the wording, and use of AI allows us to decrease the amount of mistakes. I would like to mention that the artificial intelligence, here I refer to the generative AI, provide us with opportunity to protect intellectual property or the copyrights for the further use within the marketplaces in order to protect the creative works. We also design the legislative project, so-called economy of data, and we actively cooperate with marketplaces in order to introduce the regulations, so including legislative regulations on the use of production within this website. We have a cooperation with the Eurasian Patent Organization in terms of the exchange of different technologies, including 3D technology, and we ensure that this experience could be used by others. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this insightful sharing with us, Mr. Yuri Zobov. And we'll stay in Russia, and we're gonna move. Yes, no worries. Okay. We're gonna move just a little bit to China, and as you know, that China is one of the most advanced countries in AI. And here, maybe I will share. I will ask the tough question. In addition to the experience of China that we'll be sharing with Mr. Yang Su, the first level inspector, China National Intellectual Property Administration, that I will welcome. Yes, a round of applause, please. Okay. And the question here would be how we can help ensure the balance between innovation and also the right of creators. The floor is yours.
感谢主持人的提问。
Thank you so much. I would like to express my gratitude for the question. The artificial intelligence as a strategic technology leading to a new round of scientific and technological revolution and of course changed the lifestyle a lot. At the backgrounds, we do see the rapidly changing technology of AI, and there is a question how we can use the systems of AI in order to stimulate innovations and support the industrial development. And I guess it's the common issue for all the countries within the new realities. The managing of Intellectual Property Office of China attaches the great importance to the development of AI technology and has put us to a series of works in the fields of patenting. First, it improves the supervision and inspection standards in the field of artificial intelligence, introducing the amendments to the patent examination guidelines, and also design of the guidelines for filing applications for inventions related to the AI to guide the patent application process in this field according to the regulations and standards. Here we need to use the technology of AI in order to enhance the connection between the source of information and human resources. The third point is the necessity of use of AI in the search process. Here we refer to the information search, also to the patent search, semantic search, and image search technologies, which need to be improved to increase the efficiency. In the fields of patent classification, we should apply intelligent classification technology to help classifiers in their work. In the field of patent examination, expand the application scenarios of AI by providing intelligent support in the form of smart research, online translation, image recognition. At present, the China Intellectual Property Office is actively exploring the application of large language model technologies for a series of research and project initiatives. We hope to use these technologies to deepen semantic understanding, further improve of efficiency and accuracy, assist examiners in better inventive step evaluation, and notice drafting, continuously improving workflows, and enhance the quality and efficiency of patent examination. We will continue to explore new application scenarios, promote the optimization and upgrading of intelligent examination tools, and improve the patent examination systems. Of course, we do hope to have an active exchange between agencies in order to face the challenges together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing the experience of China regarding so many applications of LLMs, of face recognition that are aligned with the latest advanced technologies in the world. So thank you again, sir. Okay, so we're gonna finish with our last speaker. It's not the last, but we would like to give you another perspective to the topic. In fact, we have discussed the topic from different perspectives, from international organizations, from the experience of countries, but how about the private sector? And we have with us the representative of AI policy in Meta, who will be sharing with us something very important regarding regarding the perspective of the private sector and how to adopt the intellectual properties. So I will give the floor to Salim Aziz, the Director of Public Policy at Meta. And I would like to ask you the following question. What are the main challenges that you are facing when you collaborate and do your partner with different governments around the world? We know that we have many offices around the world and around regions. So what are the main challenges and how you can overcome this?
Thank you, Professor Khalil. If it's okay, maybe I'll just go up because I have to bend down a little bit.
Yes, please. A round of applause, please.
Apologies, thank you. I'm a little bit vertically challenged, so I have to bend down a bit. Pleased to be here. Thank you for this really important topic. As Professor mentioned, I'm part of Meta, global digital platform of just over 3 billion people that use our services daily. we are deeply invested in the development and application of AI, particularly, to benefit, obviously, Meta as a company, but also communities worldwide, including those in developing nations. I want to actually pick up on something Mr. Darren Tang said about AI, not being God. I think some people do think AI has come a long way. I think it's developed quite rapidly, but there's a lot of things that AI can't do, right? And I think the most advanced large language model today is probably as smart, maybe not even as smart as a house cat, right? There's like 4 fundamental things that AI still cannot do. AI cannot understand the physical world like humans or animals and others can. AI, it doesn't have persistent memory that humans and animals do. It cannot reason and plan. I know we have reasoning models, but that is different. AI truly cannot reason and plan. It can be trained on specific algorithms and reasoning. And lastly, AI cannot solve new problems. It just regurgitates. It's great for idea generation. If you give it a problem, a brand new problem, it can't solve it, that no one else has solved, or find a way to solve it, right? It can solve existing problems. So it's great for efficiency, it's useful, but I think we have to be very realistic when we talk about capabilities of AI. So I think it's important that we frame this AI and IP question correctly. The core question before us is, how do you balance innovation with the creator rights in the age of AI? This is a question that Meta engages with daily. As the Director General also mentioned, AI is a tool. It's a transformative tool, much like the printing press, like the camera or the computer before it. It's designed to enhance human creativity and productivity, not to supplant it, right? So a foundational understanding is key here. That for a company like Meta and many other AI companies, including the French minister mentioned Mistral, I don't know how many people actually know, a lot of the folks at Mistral actually used to work at Meta's Fair Labs. So this is the beauty of open research and an open ecosystem, which is so crucial for countries to be a part of this AI development. But to develop a foundational model like Meta's Llama or Mistral or any other, it involves training these models with large amounts of data. It involves extracting patterns and facts and ideas from vast amounts of publicly available information. Now, this is a process of learning from underlying works to understand those concepts. It's not in itself an infringement of copyright. You're not storing that data. The purpose is not to reproduce protected expression from training data, but to understand those patterns and enable the model to generate entirely new content in response to the user prompts. So properly functioning and properly trained AI models do not represent or allow direct access to expressive content. They may have been trained on it. So the primary challenge that legal and policy regimes globally face is that how do you facilitate Gen AI innovation while respecting the established intellectual property principles that rights owners have? So at Meta, we advocate for copyright frameworks that enable both AI innovation and also flourishing the creative industries. This means embracing flexible models like fair use, and the text and data mining exceptions are super important for AI training. Similar to those innovation-leading countries around the region, like obviously the United States, Japan, and Singapore as well, and many here in this room. So these principles allow models to learn efficiently, which is crucial for progress in AI. And for Meta's Llama, for instance, was trained on publicly available information in a manner consistent with existing laws. But while training these models on the publicly available data, we also want to empower content owners. So for example, Meta and many other companies in the industry, they respect the robots.txt protocol, which allows website owners to specify if their content should not be crawled. So you have an ability to opt out to say, please do not train on my data. This aligns with the industry best practices. There's also an challenge of transparency, right? So the sheer scale of data required to train these powerful models makes documenting and disclosing every piece of training data infeasible. It's almost impossible to know the copyright status of every single piece of publicly available data at that scale. So to just give you one example, the latest model from Meta called Llama 4 was trained on 30 trillion tokens of text, images, and video. So how do you categorize and create transparency on that? So if the transparency measures are deemed necessary, they must be reasonable and proportionate and reflect the technical realities of large-scale model training. They should not create innovation-averse burdens that, and must allow for the protection of trade secrets and confidential information, of course. So we believe that licensing for active training Gen AI models on publicly available data is not required under existing legal frameworks like fair use and text and data mining exceptions. Now, compulsory licensing schemes could inadvertently become mechanisms to simply transfer resources from AI to other sectors rather than fostering a balanced innovation ecosystem. But there's opportunities. I think there's opportunity for distinct voluntary market-driven licensing. I'll give you one example, and Meta has done a multi-year deal with Reuters for news, so that allows Meta's commercial assistant, the Meta AI assistant, to access Reuters' current news content, advancing the AI's ability to provide real-time, factual news summaries with clear attribution to the source. So this is an example of platform finds it's efficient to license specific pieces of content for a particular use case, in this case, news. It demonstrates that the market can and does find solutions on its own without additional policy intervention to mandate licensing for model training itself. I just want to end with the power of open source. I think we are deeply committed to making sure that AI is accessible to all, and which is why Meta commits to an open source approach to AI. And what this means is that countries like Kazakhstan and countries in this room can actually use Meta's foundational models to train those models on your culture, on your values, to have the latest AI technology and make it accessible. In fact, Kazakhstan has done just that. They have, just before this session, I announced an accelerator program with the Ministry of Digital Development here in Kazakhstan with Minister Zaslan. And effectively, what they've done is they've trained Meta's Llama on 150 billion tokens of Kazakh and Russian language, and they have made it available to the entire Kazakh developer community. And so we're going to accelerate a lot of startups and developers to build public sector solutions using the model that Kazakhstan has built using Meta's Llama. So this is the beauty of collaboration that I think that countries and private sector can do to have AI sovereignty, have control over the culture, values, not just language, but the culture and values of AI by using open source technology, which is what we support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sarim Aziz, for sharing your perspective from the meta angle. And as we have already noticed, that AI is just a tool, okay? So we have learned from our expert, and they agreed on that, at least, that it is just a tool. And Mr. Sarim Aziz has shared also with us that AI does not reason. It just learns. So we can say that we are at the beginning of this wave of AI and not at the end of this wave of AI. So we have to adapt maybe an agile and flexible approach in order to make some progress. And this is not for technology, but for the humanity at all. So we have seen during this session, and I'm not sure if we can share the poll or not. There is a poll that we can share in order to have the opinion of the participant, or we skip it. Okay, we can skip it because the organizer told me that we can share a poll to vote for something, just to let you know. Okay, let's do it just by our hands. What do you think for our participants and attendees who are with us? Okay, in your view, who should hold the right after listening to our experts? What do you think of this question? Who should hold the rights to content created with the use of AI? Who is responsible? Okay, the first, AI itself, okay, AI as a creator. The second one, okay, you can scan here the QR code. The second one, the person who used AI as a tool. So who is responsible? AI, this is the first option. The second one, the person who used AI as a tool. Please vote here in order to have a brief overview about your opinions. The third option, the company that developed the algorithm, okay, the company that developed the algorithm. The fourth option, no one. So such works should not be eligible for copyright protection. And the fifth one, if you have another answer, okay? And I'm not sure if our organizer can share with us the statistics of responses or answers, or we can skip it. Okay. We can wait for a minute in order to share with us the opinions of our participants. Okay? Let's do it. Okay, we're gonna see together the opinions of different attendees according to what you have followed as a discussion from our lineup of speakers. Okay, so 10% or not 10%, just, okay, nine people said that AI is the responsible, okay? 58 people said that the person who used AI, so it depends of the use of AI. 20 people said that the company that has developed the algorithm is the one responsible of this, and 18 people said that no one, okay, and such works are not copyright. And the last one is, so we can have here a very good answer, because Thomas Edison, said one time that each invention depends, the value of invention depends on its use. So AI, similarly, we can say also that the use of AI will be responsible of its benefit or its disadvantage. And we can close this session. Thank you so much. We can have a photo here with our speaker. Our speakers, please.
Пожалуйста, спикеры, подойдите.
Коллеги, можно фото сделать на фоне основного.
Dear colleagues, we can make a joint photo here.
If everybody could take his or her seat, we're about to begin. Get comfortable. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Charles McLean, and I'm delighted to be moderating what I expect would be a really interesting panel for this forum. The next decade of power redefining global influence. That's a pretty general topic, but I think it's a relevant one. I think if we had had this forum a year or two ago, we would have defined global influence maybe in terms of military strength or economic strength. Perhaps we would have talked about geographic positioning. We might have talked about cultural strength, soft power. But I think that that's changing now, and it's changing pretty dramatically. I'm sorry? Ah. Let's ask for tech support. Can you hear me now? No. Okay. I guess I can lean into it this way, but that's a little awkward. We're talking about the various components of global influence. In the past, we might have talked about military strength, economic strength, geographic location, soft power, cultural strength. But I think that's changing quite dramatically now. We have a very interesting panel of some very expert advisors who can give us a little guidance on that, and I hope enlighten us a little bit. I'm going to throw out a question that I would ask all of them to respond to briefly, just 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion, I hope, among ourselves, culminating, I hope, in about 10 minutes of question and answers. So if you have some questions and you want to save them for the end, please do. We're going to try to allocate some time for that. Immediately to my left is Dr. David Apsiauri, who is the General Director of the Georgian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is also a professor at various universities. He's been an ambassador. He has a great deal of global political experience. Immediately to his left is Christoph Heusgen, who's the former chairman of the Munich Security Conference, and for 12 years was Angela Merkel's diplomatic advisor. To his left is David, now this could be tricky for me, David Viadze. I hope I'm close, David. I apologize if I'm... Yeah, I'm close enough. He's vice president of the Swiss Forum for International Affairs. And then to his left, Bruno Fuchs, who is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the French National Assembly. And finally, David Frankopan, who is a professor of global history at Worcester College, University of Oxford, and the author of several books, one of which I managed to purchase at the last minute before I came, and he has also a great deal of expertise to offer. I'm going to ask everybody to give 2 or 3 minutes to describe what they think global influence will look like on a national level in 10 years, in 2035. So that is a chance to talk a little bit about the response to that question, but also to talk a little bit about some of the areas where the changes might be occurring in the years ahead. Let's start with you, David.
Good afternoon. I really appreciate for this excellent opportunity to be a part of this dialogue. And this is the second time I'm here in this very beautiful city. And many thanks to organize multipolar world with floating segments based on regional, interregional units floating simultaneously in one uncertain environment. But anyway, the question is, so what might be in future? I think you share this view that it's difficult to respond today. But in my view, by the way, the last question in our view was linked with, the necessity to at least response on the future of the world, what will be in future, cooperation, still confrontation, and coercion, right? So I think in future we'll be witnessing environment, in my view, will not be a matter of temporary climate, regrettably, because and that might be a reality, at least in my understanding. But what is the response? But what is the response? Which model will be probably efficient? And I think I will not be very extraordinary, making certain special statements in this respect. And I would say the balancing still. The policy of balancing, the strategy of balancing, and the path of compromises. This is the way, has always been recognized as a good way, so there will be more and more commonality in understanding that through that environment, we at least will be more or less in stable environment. Yeah. So this is my first reaction on that.
Christoph.
Yes, of course, there's every reason to be gloomy. I mean, when we look around, when we look across the Atlantic, we see, populism striving. We see nationalism striving, and not only there, in many parts of the world. We have no longer we have the impression the rule of law, but it's basically the rule of the jungle or the rule of the strongest, and this is the trend. I believe we can turn this around. Coming here to Astana, so you come up here, you all came to this place, and what do you see outside? The logo of the United Nations. We have the first speech of the president here, underlining the need for the UN Charter and for the UN to strive. We have Ban Ki-moon here as a symbol for the UN, and also speaking out on something which hardly anybody speaks out anymore on climate change and what to do something. And so I believe, yes, we have this populism, but I think all these populist nations, we'll see this with US, we'll see this nationalists with Russia and others, there will be drawbacks, and they will find that actually they are shooting themselves in the foot. And I believe it's up to countries like my own, Germany, it's up to countries like Kazakhstan, like the famous middle power, to work together. The European Union is key, but also other alliances of nations. European Union now is working for more than they've ever done before. So how it's worldwide now being contested and violated, but no, we step up. Kazakhstan was one of the founding members with the ICRC to say we will want to have international humanitarian law respected. WTO, I mean, many business people are desperate, it doesn't work, the mechanisms don't work. There are now 50 countries which form the so-called MPIA. I said, well, within WTO, we do find mechanism when we have controversies to work together and go to have this arbitration courts working. So let's do and say, well, we defend the so-called rules-based order on the base of the end, because this is what the world has benefited from. This is what the European Union has benefited from, and we don't strive on nationalism, on separating us from other countries, but let's work together, and we can do it.
An optimistic take. Thank you. David.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by saying what a great pleasure it is to be back in Astana at the Astana International Forum, and to see it grow and become stronger and even more interesting. I think before we try to answer the question, what will define power in 10 years, I think we need to take the lay of the land, and I think that's what my colleagues have been doing. It's clear that we're not living through some regular transition or your ordinary garden variety change of power or change of system, etc. We're living through an era where there's global change. It's a change of eras, which happens anywhere from 100 to 40 years, 50 years. As an example of what I'm talking about, think back to the beginning of the 20th century when oil became the main fuel for navies. That was a game changer. So I think our game changer now is clearly AI. I don't want to, I'm not starting by mentioning AI because I think it's the defining element, but it is the highest form of technical progress that that human society has reached. And it is not just technical progress, it is unpredictable where it may go. And since we don't have a good track record of guardrails, and together with AI, we keep forgetting, we say HI, human intelligence, but we keep forgetting another acronym, which is HN, which is human nature. That hasn't changed. And that human nature could drive this AI off the rails as it misused and mangled the previous technological breakthroughs. However, that's not the only aspect. The issue is that the entire structure, and let's be frank, the structure of the world, how member states are layered and so on, still is hierarchical. You have the so-called most powerful nations, however you want to define it. Then we have what we now start calling the middle powers. Before, part of them used to be the umbrella countries, others used to be affiliated with this or that pole. Today we have a major change in the waypoints. The waypoints, an aviation term which guides you. Okay, this is the waypoint, then you go from there to here. That is changed, or they're switched off, or they are being switched off as we speak. So that leaves a lot of the countries basically flying blind. That is coming on the heels of the end of the bipolar world, the seeming end of the unipolar world. So we're now looking for what kind of world is this? Is this a multipolar world? Okay, but multipolarity without clear defined structures is inherently dangerous because it's unstable. And there's another sort of look at this, historic look. We have witnessed the 3 years ago, the end, a train wreck actually, of the first stage of post-Soviet transition. That didn't work, obviously. So I think we have that in front of us, a conundrum of how to handle that part. But let me finish with this. This hierarchy that I was talking about, usually the members of the world community are used to looking to one or the other pole, or now looking to the most top tier, let's put it that way. Many objections can be brought to this term. And they don't see a good example. So following the example of these countries that should be providing adult supervision, most countries are going off the multilateral mindset, not track, not organization, mindset, and moving increasingly towards national egotism. I can do it alone. I don't care what the others want, and we'll make it on our own. Or we will have smaller groups. Multilateralism hasn't entirely gone off the road. It has become smaller, small group multilateralism, like-minded groups. Incidentally, in my view, like-minded groups, this concept throughout the last decade or two was one of the concepts that basically did a bad turn to universal multilateralism. Because instead of thrashing it out, negotiating, engaging in diplomacy, what the Security Council, for example, should be doing, they went into like-minded groups. It's much easier to talk to like-minded members of a group. And that sapped the negotiations, the heavy horse trading. I'm sorry to speak a little too long, but that should be fine for your opener, I guess.
It's a good opener. Thank you, David. Bruno, how do you think global power is going to look different 10 years from now than it does now?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very happy to share this moment with you. I try to be close to the microphone. I think the world will face two major fault lines. First one, as it was already explained, but maybe I can add some many things. It's the vision of the organization of the model of society the different countries have. We have, coming from Europe after the Second World War, we had the idea, perhaps it was an utopia, that the world shaped by the Second World War was gradually extend to the entire planet and give peace and prosperity to everybody. That was really the utopia we are starting to work on. And it works already because we had peace in Europe for about many decades. We have a lot of decline of it's a decline of poverty in the world. We have about 600 million Chinese people who went out of the poverty because of this mondialization and capitalism that give to everybody more capacity to live, and the reconstruction of Europe and lasting peace among democratic countries and powers. That was our reality for a moment. But we have to face a situation in the front. We have about 8% of people in the world living in democracy, in a complete democracy. That is a study from the Economist Intelligence Unit. And that means that it's very poor. Today, the democratic system is in danger, is a real danger. But if you ask questions to citizens living in Iran, living in Russia, living in North Korea, they all want to speak freely, to move wherever they want, and to respect the identity of the others. So they would like to live in such a world. You explained exactly the new word as the autocratic government want to impose to the citizen. And the second fault line that we have to face is the growing disconnected between governments and the people that claim to represent. The crisis of democratic legitimacy is real. Citizens across the globe are demanding accountability, transparency, and inclusion, and they are increasingly turning to protest social movements and the digital platforms to express themselves. In many cases, institutions is failing to keep peace. Meanwhile, new technology, AI, cyber capacity, autonomous weapons, and mass surveillance are amplifying both the power of the state and the voice of individual, but they are also introducing new risks, disinformation, digital repression, and even the erosion of truth itself. So that was the two main issues we have to face. The model of society we want to live in and want to live to our children, and also the capacity to represent the wants, the aspiration of the population. And we see in the world that those aspirations are less and less represented by the government. They should represent the aspiration.
Thank you, Bruno. Peter.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm a historian, so I'm going to be much more boring than my distinguished colleagues sitting next to me, who've spoken in very abstract terms about the future. History and policymakers, it's always about logistics and about reality and nitty-gritty. So I'll give a sort of a slightly different type of view to my colleagues. As several have said, it's a pleasure to be back here in Astana and in Kazakhstan, so thank you for having me. So look, first, it's important to mention climate change. Here in Kazakhstan in March, you were 10 degrees above your average temperatures in an extreme heat wave that shocked many people in Kazakhstan, particularly because this came 12 months after the catastrophic floods that did so much damage to livelihoods here. Central Asia as a whole is warming faster than any other part of the world except the Arctic. So long-term sustainability in 10 years, it's are you able to manage water supplies in particular, glacier melt, water rights, the kinds of challenges that will require cooperation in this region are acute, particularly with things like glacier loss and heat islands. And a country the size of Kazakhstan is not all equal in this regard. But second, it's about more nuts and bolts of logistics. So most estimates assume that AI on its own is going to double our energy requirements in the next 5 years. I'm going to keep that as a separate category to climate change. I believe that scientists and my colleagues all around the world will find ways of mitigating, improving, becoming more sustainable, will find ways of market-based models that will incentivize and improve and hopefully solve some of these challenges. But those demands for the ability to generate power present questions about not just where that power comes from. You know, I've been following very closely the President's announcements about carbon neutral pathways here in Kazakhstan and how to balance oil, gas, coal, and so on. But it's about lots of the nitty-gritty, boring things that people don't like to hear about in presentations. You know, my friend Dr. Cohen here will tell you everything is about access to materials and minerals, not just rare earths, which is something that we in the European Union are extremely overexcited about at the moment, with very good reason. That's why Ursula von der Leyen was here in Kazakhstan on what President Trump called Liberation Day. The fact that the President of the European Union was in Central Asia was very significant, I think, about the way in which our priorities are changing. But it's about how do you provide upgrades to power grids that enable you to even distribute electricity to the locations where they're needed. That requires things like copper. That requires things like pipelines. That requires transformers. That requires upgrades of grids. Those kinds of things are easy to forget, I think, when we talk about political models and middle powers. History, more interesting to read about great leaders, but it's always about logistics. It's about food and water. It's about sustainability. It's about finding the right locations for your cities. It's about finding structures that enable long-term success, which, you know, most governments, whether they are any different kind of democracies, there are lots of different kinds of democracies, even in Europe alone, there are lots of different kinds of models, and by and large, states want to have long-term viability. So it's how those outcomes get distributed, which is, I think, of great interest. So here in Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan 2030, Kazakhstan 2050 as national plans seem to me, it doesn't mean that the answers are going to be right, but those seem to be the right kinds of questions. We in Europe don't have those plans. The United States doesn't have a long-term plan, and that makes the age of hardware and the age of logistics, unfortunately, an age of competition and an age of great state competition because of the colonization of resources in the same way that generations before us have done that too. Now, we might think we're more enlightened. We have tools for international law and other organizations, multilateral and others, to help regulate competition and cooperation. But that's not what reality looks like when people want what they want. So I think my starting point for a conversation about the next 10 years is what are those primary requirements from a very nuts and bolts logistical point of view. You can keep the list going, for example. Air pollution in Central Asia is catastrophic. Bishkek was 6 times above World Health Organization levels. The sandstorm in Tashkent 10 days ago that shut down flights, led to deaths in the city. That's a reality of what today looks like. And we should be thinking about how do we mitigate, stand in the way of what some of those challenges look like in the coming years, and whether we as Europeans, as British people, as Americans, as Kazakhs, as Eastern Kazakhs, wherever we're from, whether we are all on the same page in trying to find those kinds of best possible outcomes. Thank you.
Peter, thank you. I'd like to, I'll start with you, Christoph, if I can. We're moving, it seems to me, from a multilateral world where economic integration was considered to be a prophylactic against war, and we're moving into a sphere of influence world where great power politics seem to be ascendant. Who are going to be the winners and the losers in that context? And how will the middle powers like Kazakhstan fare?
I disagree that we are going into the direction again of the spheres of influence. There are trends there. If you put like the map where the Soviet Union was active also in Asia and other countries, and you look at where Russia is having a Wagner troop, it's pretty much the same. So these kind of spheres influence what they're trying to do right now around Russia. Yes, but this is, for me, not the future. Also, when you see now the United States, how they have been moving, I mean, there's so much discussion right now about in Europe, will we continue to be able to rely on the US as it was in the past? And the response is no, we Europeans have to get our act together. And I come back to what I said before. We have to move with the middle powers, and as middle powers become more self-confident, and we get that when we do get our act together. The European Union is a big player worldwide on trade because they have majority decision in trade. In others they don't, but I think we will get there. Peter, I think you mentioned the problem of water. I mean, if I'm not wrong, the 5 Central Asian countries have a few years ago even almost fought war around water, but they have finally come together. The OSCE, by the way, has helped doing this, and they have recognized we have to work together on this. I told you about the WTO. We have not been able to resolve any problems. Now, 45 countries have put themselves together and say, okay, we will have a mechanism where we resolve our problems between us. So I think that's a way forward, that the middle powers don't stand there and wait what the big guys are doing, but assume responsibility. And then, of course, we have to fight populism. Our population is now, the governments have to react very, very fast. But it's also sometimes a problem of the governments that they, in their election campaigns, just promise everything and they will do such and such in such a short term. And it doesn't work, and then the people are dissatisfied and populists come. So also when governments are there, they have to be realistic. I think people understand that things cannot be changed so quickly. So I think one should be a bit more realistic, and sometimes one should do like Churchill and say, listen, blood, sweat, and tears. This is what we are needed. In Germany, after Russia's invasion in Ukraine, our former Chancellor Scholz gave a Zeitenwende, change of time speech, where he said we have to do 1, 2, 3, very tough. He got 80% approval rate. So why not? I think people understand that things are not that easy. So don't promise them if you cannot deliver. And if democratic governments in general deliver on what they said, I think that's the end of populists.
Peter, you brought up the climate issue. I'd like to explore that a little bit. Climate change is obviously going to produce climate migrants. People are moving out of unsustainable environments into more sustainable environments. How is that going to shift the geopolitical landscape in the future? How is that going to affect power?
I think the first thing I'd say, with great respect, Mr. Chairman, is that that's not what the data tells us. people don't migrate away from climate pressure. That sounds logical. It sounds like they probably do, but they don't. So property prices in the south of France are higher than they've ever been. The number of migrants moving inside the United States to Florida and into fire-ridden parts of California has gone upwards rather than downwards. It's a completely logical thing to think that people will move. Historically, when there are climate pressures and climate stresses, this is something I've written about, people don't move in mass migrations. They try to stay close to their family homes. They normally either then starve, sometimes to death, or they're prevented from moving. And we can look, for example, at the population of Gaza for an exact example of this. People don't want to go and live in a different country just because they think that the odds are against them, and that suffering can be acute and terrible. And unfortunately, that's one of the great lessons of history going back many thousands of years. So the idea that suddenly people get on planes or bring carts or cars and move sounds logical, but in fact what happens with climate pressure is you find food shortages, you find inflationary pressure, you find hoarding, and then you find civil breakdown. In the worst case scenarios, that leads to revolution and war, and lethality events that in some cases produce 40 to 50% of population loss. So it would be theoretically right to have a conversation about what does migration look like, but there is no previous example in history where that has happened in a way that looks like anything that the philosophical view of today looks like. So I would stick with what I know, which is evidence-led, and that would mean that people will need to try and find local solutions.
So just to follow up on that, would you expect that essentially climate change will be power neutral in the future, or will there be implications that we aren't anticipating?
The short answer is that if climate models, we're now above 1.5, if they move in the direction that France is currently planning a model in case to anticipate change of temperatures up to 4 degrees by the end of the century, above Industrial Revolution levels, we're at the dawn of one of the great humanitarian catastrophes in human histories. There is no question about that. We have more people on this planet than ever before. We have increasing pressures on water and calorie productions, and to find a way to avoid the rocks of what look like are likely to happen, we need to have a global commons that allows us to solve problems collaboratively. So one of those questions is, what do multilateral organizations in the future look like? What does the reform of the United Nations, for example, look like? But in practice, where you have significant pressures, and the three most climate-stressed parts on Earth are the Gulf region, where there's financial capability to mitigate, South Asia, particularly the southern part of India, where the population is about 500 million people, already at extreme risk, and then in parts of China too, where water shortages is acute. The single largest infrastructure project in the world at the moment is diverting water from the southern part of China to the north, where average amounts of water are about 20% of what's required. So you can solve through technology, you can solve through investment, you can solve through planning, but you can't beat nature and you can't beat the Grim Reaper. So you need to understand that, and if you understand that, then you maybe make decisions differently. So this blip we've had for the last 30 years of a very sharp decline in global poverty, as the panel have mentioned, of limited amounts of very serious interstate conflicts, notwithstanding Yugoslavia, Rwanda, genocide, Palestine, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Iraq. But that, from a historian's point of view, is exceptional. And if you believe that we are smarter than our ancestors, then maybe the world will get better. But we should be thinking quite hard about what those humanitarian challenges look like in terms of just food resilience. For example, how many states in Europe stockpile enough food to be able to get through a winter? And I can tell you the answer is none. In Europe, we're already 25% of the continent water stressed. So there should be national resilience plans that aren't just about how do we find critical minerals to improve our weapons capacity and our defense industries. It goes much deeper through what are those realities of logistics, of calories, of water, and of a world that is highly competitive, where you can be spent out by people with deeper pockets.
Yes.
Very briefly, can I contest that? I mean, you must have studies about the Sahel where you have the herders and the farmers getting cross with each other because people leave those, those farms where they cannot farm anymore. Same with the US. You have now parts in California or Florida where insurance companies don't give house insurance anymore. And I mean, for Americans who have most of their fortune in their real estate, if this is no longer insured, banks will not give a credit. You move away. So I think there are movements. Of course, you have to have certain incentives or mechanisms, but I think that people just stay like this. And sorry, for Gaza is something totally different. It's not. It's war. And that people are not ready to leave because in war they're driven out and this and nobody will accept. You cannot compare that.
What have we done in Europe to allow refugees to come from Gaza to our own continent? In the face of a current humanitarian crisis, what have we done in Europe, all the Gulf states? It's not just a European, Gaza is not a European problem alone, but the global community has been static in the ability to try to find safe havens for people who are under huge privation. And I suspect that is a model that when we find populations in similar levels of stress, like in South Sudan, for example, at the moment, or in the belt that goes from the Democratic Republic of Congo right the way through to East Africa, where we have about 300 million people facing acute food and water poverty, then there's very little ability for the rest of the world, whether the middle powers or great powers, to take a role in trying to mitigate. And those populations are not, by and large, moving. You find small populations who are typically elite. They're young men who try to find a way to find their labor that can be monetized, and then they remit. So, for example, in Central Asia, across all the Central Asian states, particularly Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, almost half the country's GDP is from remittances of people working in particularly places like Russia, sending money back home. So migration is a form of trying to help people back at home, trying to stay close to their families. That's the reality.
I would like to not necessarily dwell entirely on the climate issue, but I would like to try to see if we can broaden that to what role the international institutions might have in addressing questions like that. Because clearly something like climate change, it may affect each individual nation differently, but it affects almost every nation in the world right now. David Chikviadze, if you can just comment from your former UN perch, give us an idea about how multilateral institutions will fare in terms of global influence in the next decade.
Thank you very much, Charles. Let me predicate what I'm going to say by offering a couple of definitions. Because we often hear the acronym UN or the term United Nations has failed here or succeeded there. What will the international organizations do to reform themselves? How will multilateralism, and that word is often used interchangeably with international organizations, especially the universal one. Let me just try to clarify something on the tail end of over 30 years in the UN, after which I still believe in the organization fervently. I think the organization, if it didn't exist, would have to be invented, except in our day and age, it probably wouldn't have been invented. But the issue is that, when I joined the UN in January 93, it was on the tail end of Bill Clinton had just been inaugurated president. And he won his presidential campaign under the slogan, "It's the economy, stupid." And, I've been colored by that, and also not least by the fact that when I went into the building, one of my colleagues next to me had a big slogan blown up over his office desk saying, "It's the member states, stupid." If we do not remember that it is the member states of the United Nations who created the organization, who set its goals 80 years ago, and who run the organization, we are going to be misunderstanding the problem and what's the term, medical term? diagnosing and giving the wrong medication. The United Nations organization is many things. So when we talk about this, we have to make it clear to everybody who's listening or to ourselves initially. Who are we talking about? The UN failed here. Why doesn't the UN, I've heard this all the time, why hasn't the UN been able to stop the war in Syria? Why can't the UN stop the war in Ukraine? Somebody recently asked me, why doesn't the UN show up earlier? And I explained to people, the UN, meaning the Secretariat, meaning the Secretary General, this is the usual misunderstanding. The UN cannot just show up, quote unquote, earlier. In order for the UN to show up earlier, the Security Council needs to be seized of the matter. It needs to discuss the matter ad nauseum. It has to find a way to horse trade, negotiate, and come to a decision, not put in blue a resolution text that has not been discussed with the other side in order to score points. But to come to a negotiated resolution text, adopt it, put in that text the paragraph that says, request the Secretary General to do X, Y, and Z. And after that's done, the UN needs another resolution which provides the finances and the logistics for that first resolution. Only after that can we show up. I'll give you an example. I was backstopping a colleague in 1994 who was dealing with the Great Lakes of Africa, and this was end of March. He said, look, I'm burned out. It's been a long time. I need to take 3 weeks off. I said, sure. So we used to back each other up. 6th of April, a plane is shot down with 2 presidents and all hell breaks loose. 800,000 people are killed. And I would go to the Security Council, both, listening in I was a junior officer, but listening into the consultations of the whole in that little room and formal meetings. For 1 week, when 30,000 people roughly were being killed, macheted to death, or if you had a little money, you could buy a bullet, and were thrown into Lake Kivu. The member states in the Security Council were discussing, so how do we go in, who provides the transport, who provides the logistics, and then what's the sunset clause? And this is in response to Secretary General Boutros-Ghali going down to the Security Council and saying, please give me 5,000 heavily armed troops to go in and stop the carnage, instead of saying, no, Secretary General, we're going to give you 25,000 heavily armed troops, we're going to provide the transportation and give you a free hand, go in and do the job. They were discussing what's the sunset clause and who's going to provide the heavy lift. So you see, it's all very well to blame, and I'm not being defensive, I don't work there anymore, but it's just a matter of fairness. And today, when we hear the UN has to reform to be, I hate this term in particular, to be fit for purpose. Excuse me, have you actually described what the purpose is 80 years from its creation? Has anybody reevaluated the organization? Or in reality, have the permanent 5 members to keep the UN out of its national security business, have they given the UN every possible kind of job, from vaccinations to plowing the fields to, talking about this and that, in order for them not to be, taking particular interest in a security situation. And yet, peace and security is why this organization was created in 1944-45. So today, if that's not what you want the UN to do, please redefine it. You're the ones, but don't ask the organization to reform itself. It's been reforming itself for at least over 30 years that I've been there. Every year, every Secretary General reforms it. It is the member states who are lacking today the multilateral mindset to use the organization that they have and work through it. That's the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I want to allow a little bit of time for Q&A, but I would like to go through the panel for a quick answer to a simple question. Bruno?
Very, very quickly, to follow the 2 last person, the speakers. If you want to solve and resolve these vital issues like water, AI, or climate, it's impossible to do it country by country. That means that we need absolutely to go through this issue by a multilateral approach, by cooperation approach. And in the United Nations, for the moment, we have big powers. They are, at the moment, following their own interest. They're not following the world interest anymore. We have to face this. A big part of the member of United Nations working on their own interest, trying, and they, some of them, like the administration of President Trump, they are increasing the difficulties and the danger for the citizens. So we absolutely need to find and to redefine a new sociology of multilateralism, and it can start in Astana. The speech of the Kazakh president this morning was very clear on this. We have to start with middle power, and everybody, all the other power, they want to start this new multilateralism, and you only can be in cooperation with people who want to cooperate. And we see, for example, in the Council of Security, Russians and Americans working together against Ukraine. So it blocked completely the system because it was something that was impossible due to the value few months or few years ago. So we need to reinvent a new way to cooperate between the countries. They want to cooperate and they want to have the same vision of the world we will leave to our children.
Thank you, Bruno. This is the quick last question for everybody on the panel. If you can make a quick answer to the question, are we moving toward a more cooperative world in the next 10 years or a more competitive one? How do you see it in general terms? David. First, David.
Number one. So just as a brief response, I think we're moving towards segments in terms of structural involvement, cooperation. Anyway, the regional approach, the regional cooperation, and updated forms of cooperation as middle powers, in my view, will be prevailing for next decade. And it's been mentioned, by the way, today at a very interesting speech by the President of the European Council today. Also, he mentioned that probably we'll be witnessing in future the sum up of original, we would say, forms of cooperation. I have no response whether it is the best way, but no doubt new approaches will be a matter of practice, in my view. One very brief amendment regarding middle powers here. I can give you one positive case if you take this opportunity here. We definitely updating a new, I would say, content of middle power. It's not a new phenomenon, but it's updating quite rapidly and quite interestingly. And I would say that also in future, in terms of this new model of appearance, I mean, these national relations here, the commercialization of relations based on the economic motivation, based on the benefits, I think will be a very interesting cementing element for future cooperation. That's why this project might be a matter of interest here. So more commerce, more benefits in order to channel the business-based partnership in order to minimize the risk of global confrontation. It's a reality. And by the way, if we consider this project, have a look. Global players, regional players, smaller players, producers, transit countries, all kinds of activities, they are in one basket. And everybody, in fact, except minor exceptions, I would say, here, they are more or less positive in that way. So I think the project approach will be dominating in future, especially for the countries that are located between East and West, that are link the distant marketplaces. And that's why, again, I'm saying that it might be definitely if not kind of recipe for the resolution of all multilateral or all level problems that might be definitely quite interesting in future.
Thank you, David. This is a lightning round, so let's quickly give me an answer as to whether you see a more competitive or more cooperative world. Christoph.
We certainly have a more competitive or even confrontational policy that we see by Russia, that we see by the US right now. But I still believe that the future belongs to a more cooperative system. And I would like to see some French friends here I might remember them that during the last German government, the one before, there was the French foreign minister at the time, Yves Le Drian, and the German foreign minister Heiko Maas created an alliance for multilateralism. And they got up to 100 countries joining this. And then it was stopped by the following government. But I see a future in this, that the middle powers, the countries that believe in cooperation, that they know you get stronger when you work together, when you see that the interests of your country and your partner are best served when you look at both interests and not only. So I was from the very beginning optimistic. I think under this pressure that we are now, and we have a surprise by by the US every day. It's very good for German, French, European, Kazakh universities that no foreigner will go to the US anymore. I mean, this is also for us, some of us, good news that we will strive in our universities soon. So let's see the positive things, and let's see that the middle powers work together. And we started here in Kazakhstan.
Christoph, I absolutely love your optimism. David, number 2, lightning round. More competitive or more cooperative?
Thank you. Very briefly, humanity has always returned to the multilateral way of doing business, but only after it either sleepwalked into or charged into some catastrophic event. The Westphalian Accords came after the 100-year war, 30-year war. Same with the Congress of Vienna, same with the Paris Conference, same with Dumbarton Oaks and San Francisco. So I would like to be optimistic that we the world, collectively will be able to get back on an even keel and get back to the multilateral machinery that we've created, to using it. But for that, we need the multilateral mindset. But here's the trick. We need to do it without charging or wandering or blundering into another catastrophe. Because in this day and age, with the weaponry that we have, that catastrophe could well be our last as a functioning little planet. Therein lies the conundrum for the world today. Thank you.
Bruno?
Yeah, I would answer competitive to create value and cooperative to share and organize the way to live together. But I'm not so optimistic as far as I was a journalist formerly. So as far as I see the evolution of the governance of the countries, I'm not so optimistic. I think it's going worse and worse, unless, as I said, the countries who want to be in a cooperative way, they accelerate the way and they work together and they show and demonstrate to the others this is the best way to proceed and not the way to take care of their own interest. And then on the multilateral to reorganize and reinvent this multilateralism, I think we should introduce new categories of people, like a scientist, like entrepreneur, like non-governmental organization. It's impossible to stay just with the president of countries. It doesn't work. So we have to change the way to see the multilateralism, to represent much more the citizens and not to present it at the moment. Not enough, I would say.
Thank you, Bruno. Patrick, you get the last word. Are you, as a historian, optimistic, or are you pessimistic? Cooperation or
Historians are not in the business of emotions. I'm not here to be optimistic or pessimistic. I'm very heartened that such distinguished speakers will speak about hope. I think it's really important as a message to remind that we have choices. But I should also remind competition is not in itself bad. The greatest part of the 20th century saw the American boom as a result of the United States having a very good peer competitor that forced it to innovate. So competition in itself is not the problem. Cooperation doesn't necessarily also solve problems. Of the signatories of the Paris Accords, of the countries in the 20 largest economies in the world, not a single one has kept up to its commitments that it gave in 2015 by 2023. So we can blame Trump and say he's saying drill, but the rest of us are not cashing the checks that we promised that we had the resources for. So collaboration, it depends what that means. Cooperation depends what it means. It's about outcomes. I think history is about understanding what are the consequences and trying to prepare for those. So I'd like to say I'm neither optimistic nor pessimistic. The job is to be pragmatic, to work out what are the problems you're trying to solve and how to see whether you're doing better than expected or worse than expected.
That's a great note to end on, and I'm apologizing for us running over as we kind of expected we would, but I would love to take one or two questions from the audience if you have one. Yes? Anybody want to comment on that? Bruno?
Maybe a few words. I mean, you're completely right. I share completely your point of view. So that's why we have to organize themselves. We have to try to regulate the digital platform, because you have a lot of disinformation that completely makes the public debate impossible, because everybody has their own reality. It's impossible to share reality. You have to face two different or three different realities. So we have many things to organize, and maybe to try to have maybe a positive thought. Maybe one or two examples of our authoritarian model. We have, everybody, we know a lot of them in the world, will make a crash. So maybe the citizen will be aware of the wrong way to follow some populist, some nationalist or sovereignist. Maybe this is the only way for me in the next years to have this positive thing. We have a wrong example of what nationalism can provoke. Maybe that could be. Okay, I want to be short, so I stop on this.
One more. Yes. Just shout.
Okay, no problem. Ariel Cohen, the Atlantic Council, a terrific panel. However, my perception of what I heard was that, with the exception of a very poignant warning about climate change, the gentleman from the UK hit the nail on the head, because we're facing potentially a big war. In Europe, we're facing an unresolved problem with the Iranian nuclear program. We're facing Chinese aspirations vis-a-vis Taiwan. And with that, with respect, I'm afraid the European model that relies on trade and human rights does not have the instruments right now to address these challenges. And I agree with the gentleman we may be facing a situation that the price that the world is going to pay to create the next iteration of a cooperative order is going to be exorbitantly high. Would you care to comment on that? Thank you.
Christoph.
No, I'm happy to comment that. First on Russia, yes, there is this danger, but at the same time, as a European, having followed now also the policy of the US where you cannot 100% rely on them anymore, I think under this pressure, finally Europeans get their act together. Together with very resilient Ukrainians, I tell you, I think that Vladimir Putin, who thinks that he has more staying power, I think will be mistaken. On Iran, the Europeans actually provided several models, or in 2005, the JCPOA, which was then always destroyed by US governments. There I have to admit, it's for the Europeans alone to solve the Iranian problem is not possible. With China, I think we need to see that we see how we work with them, not confrontational, work with them, see that they also see how important it is to go by rules. I think the verdict is still out, but the confrontational path that we see in the U.S. administration is not necessarily one that the whole world needs to follow. This is again why we need middle powers to stand up, speak for the rule of law, give an example, and have others then in the end follow.
I want to thank our distinguished panel. Well done. And I thank all of you for attending and listening carefully. I wish we had had a little bit more time for Q&A, but good discussion, so thank you very much.
Yeah, I wanted to say hi. I see you coming to speak at the Money Council. All right. I won't be in Washington. Good job. Yes, sponsor. Right, but I thought it's a public sponsor. Well, for your
No, Justin. I
Justin, I just had drinks
Yeah,
with
he
Justin.
said you saw her yesterday. This is amazing panel.
No, I did.
Did you invite the panelists or somebody else was organizing?
And Tara organized everything.
Okay.
So they organized the panel, said moderating this. They're all so smart,
Yeah.
so experienced.
Where are you these days? Where do you live?
Denver, Colorado.
Oh, okay. Well, back now.
Well, what are you doing?
I work with Years of Culture, Sheikh Mayas's office. It's very interesting. And this is like a perfect example. I hope to get to work with some of these panelists for one of the initiatives.
I mean, I learned something every day. And just sharing the air with some really smart people.
Did you go to Qatar before?
No. I went to Doha for December.
I think that one's probably closer to this one in terms of subject matter. The economic forum is all about Trump. Elon Musk. Anyway, I won't hold you up. Just wanted to say hi. Nice to meet you. Yes. Coffee breaks are interesting.
Так, с Конгрессом мы